Hi class, today we are looking at Chapter 2, Lesson 2, How did Spanish exploration change the lives of people in the Americas? Let's start off by taking a look at the timeline here. Okay, here's what we got. In 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon claims Florida for Spain. In 1515, Spain completes conquest of what is now Cuba. In 1519, Hernan Cortés invades the Aztec Empire. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro invades the Inca Empire. In 1540, Francisco Coronado begins to explore the American Southwest. And in 1542, Juan Cabrillo explores the southern California coast. And in 1565, Pedro Aviles founds St. Augustine, Florida. Let's take a look at the picture that's here. Okay, this says the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan. I think that's how you say it. If not, I apologize. Among the largest cities in the world in the early 1500s. Now, obviously, nobody was around to paint it like this during that time. This is an artist rendition. So what the artists do is they base what they think things looked at off of archaeological dig sites. So they go to where the city was, they dig things up, they find things, and some of these, there are these old temple structures still there, and based on that, they can make a composite picture of what they believed things look like. Let's go over here to the text. The Columbian Exchange. When Columbus made contact with the Taino people in 1492, he began what is now called the Columbian Exchange. The term refers to the trading of items, animals, culture, ideas, and more between Europeans and native peoples of the Americas. The Spanish brought back from the Americas plants, animals, and other products unknown in Europe. These included corn, peanuts, tomatoes, potatoes, pineapples, turkeys, tobacco, and most types of beans. Farmers in Europe began to grow some of these plants, which meant that fewer people starved. Also, many of the new foods contained vitamins that made European diets healthier. As a result, the population of Europe grew. Let's take a look at the next page. The Spanish also brought new products to the Americas. These included wheat, sugar, oranges, peaches, bananas, cattle, goats, sheep, pigs, and horses. Many of these items changed the way of life for native peoples of the Americas. Horses, for example, changed the way in which American Indians hunted buffalo on the Great Plains. The Columbian Exchange did not involve just Europe and the Americas. It transformed the whole planet. Some of the plants Europeans brought to the Americas originally came from Asia and Africa. Many American plants traveled around the world as well. Chili peppers, for instance, were brought to Asia by European sailors and became popular ingredients in many Asian dishes. Not all things traded in the Columbian Exchange were useful. The Europeans also brought diseases, such as smallpox and measles, to the Americas. Because these diseases were new to the natives, they had not developed any resistance to them. As a result, they died in very large numbers. The Spanish also forced many natives to work as enslaved persons, and even shipped some back to Spain on voyages during which many died. By the 1550, few Taino survived. African slaves were brought to the islands to replace them. This forced relocation of peoples was also part of the Columbian Exchange. Spanish exploration and conquest in the Americas. By 1515, Spain had spread its conquest to control several islands in the Caribbean Sea. Spain's conquest gave them land to settle and people to enslave, but they did not bring the riches the Spanish sought. Sometimes they saw bits of gold in the hands of the island natives. The Spanish wondered, where did this gold come from? Juan Ponce de Leon was a Spanish explorer who came to the Americas on Columbus's second voyage. Later, he was the governor of the island that would become known as Puerto Rico. In 1513, Ponce de Leon became the first Spanish explorer to land in what is now part of the United States. He called the area La Floridia, Spanish for full of flowers, and claimed it for Spain. He was looking for gold, although legend says that he was also seeking a fountain of youth, a place where magical waters could restore one's youth. But Ponce de Leon found no gold in Florida and no fountain of youth either. When he returned there in 1521 to establish a Spanish settlement, he was wounded in fighting with the Calusa people of the area. He returned to Cuba and died there of his wounds. And here's a picture right there of Ponce de Leon, and it says Ponce de Leon became the first Spanish explorer to claim land in what is now the United States. Hernan Cortez, another Spanish explorer, was more successful in his search for riches. In fact, he is called a conquistador, Spanish for conqueror. Like Ponce de Leon, Cortez was very interested in finding gold. Having heard stories from the native people, he decided there must be a great empire rich in gold to the west of the Caribbean islands. He was right. An empire is a large area in which different groups are controlled by one ruler. Since the 1430s, the Aztec Empire had ruled over several native groups in what is now central Mexico. The Aztecs built a magnificent capital, Tenochtitlan, where more than 300,000 people lived. In 1502, Montezuma II became the emperor or ruler of the empire. However, many native peoples under his rule had started to rebel against the Aztecs. In 1519, Hernan Cortez left Cuba seeking the great riches he had heard about. After landing in what is today the coastal city of Veracruz, Mexico, he and his soldiers moved inland. When he arrived at Tenochtitlan, Montezuma met with him. He offered Cortez gifts of gold and precious jewels. These were not enough for Cortez, however. He took Moctezuma prisoner, causing a riot in which the emperor was killed. And here we have the statue of an Aztec eagle knight warrior found at the main temple in Tenochtitlan. And here it says, "Did you know?" Tenochtitlan was built on a watery, swampy land. The Aztecs developed floating gardens called chinampas. They stuck rows of thick posts into the swamp. Then they filled the spaces between the posts with mud. Let's get back to our story here. The Aztecs drove Cortez and his troops from the city. They battled on the plains of Otumba, where Cortez and his troops killed the Aztec commander. The Spanish then retreated to a friendlier area. A few months later, Cortez returned with a larger force to fight the Aztecs. Along the way, his army was joined by a number of native fighters unhappy with Aztec rule. This help from native allies was just one reason the Spanish were able to defeat the Aztecs. The Spanish soldiers also had two things that the Aztecs did not: fine swords and horses. These gave the Spanish a clear fighting advantage. In fact, even when outnumbered, forces with swords and lances fighting on horseback usually won the day. After 75 days of battle, Cortez and his army destroyed the Aztec capital. On its ruins, the Spanish built Mexico City. It would be the capital of a colony the Spanish called Nueva España, or New Spain. And this says the Spanish and Aztec warriors fighting at the Battle of Otumba. And let's take a look at that right here. In 1531, Francisco Pizarro, another Spanish conquistador, sailed to the west coast of South America with a small army. Like Cortez, he was following rumors he had heard of an empire rich in treasures. From the coast, he traveled with his troops to the mighty Inca Empire, high in the Andes Mountains. The Incas ruled an empire of 12 million people. Because they lived in thick stone cities high in the mountains, they did not fear the Spanish attack. The Spanish, however, had new weapons the Incas had never seen. Gunpowder had come to Europe from China centuries before. The troops Pizarro brought with him were armed with a type of gun called the harquebus. Incan weapons were no match for this. I believe it's actually harquebus. Let's take a look at this picture here. This says, the walls of Machu Picchu show the skill of the Inca builders. Take a look at that. Isn't that impressive, boys and girls? So you can see these city walls here, these huge open grass areas, but look how high up in the mountains they are. That is amazing. Pizarro's army captured Atahualpa, the Incan emperor, and killed 1,500 of his followers. When Atahualpa offered a roomful of gold in return for his freedom, Pizarro agreed. From all over the empire, valuable gold objects poured in. Yet, after the treasure was delivered, Pizarro had Atahualpa killed anyways. In 1533, the Spanish completed their conquest of the Inca Empire by capturing its capital of Cuzco. All right, let's take a look at this map right here. So it says the Aztec and Inca empires. The Aztec Empire is right here in red, and the Inca Empire is this area right here in green. So those are the two areas that the Spanish conquered. New Spain expands. By 1525, the Spanish territory of New Spain included most of present-day Mexico and Central America. Despite its size, Spanish explorers and conquistadors continued looking for rich new lands for Spain to control. In 1528, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca was exploring the coast along the Gulf of Mexico. He was shipwrecked by a hurricane and landed in what is now Texas. There, he and his crew lived among American Indians for 4 years. Eventually, they left on foot. They walked through parts of what are now New Mexico and Arizona to return to Mexico. His experiences made him sympathetic to native peoples, and he urged the King of Spain to treat them better. Hunting for riches, Hernando de Soto began an expedition in 1538 through what is now the southeastern United States. De Soto found no riches, but he and his group did become the first Europeans to see the Mississippi River. Then in 1542, De Soto became ill and died not far from the river. In 1540, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, having heard of tales of 7 cities of gold, went searching to find them. He discovered no such cities. He and his group did, however, become the first Europeans to see the Grand Canyon. They also claimed for Spain large areas of what is now the American Southwest. Here is a primary source. And remember, we've talked about primary sources before. That means that it's the exact words of the person who was there. So primary or first source. In their words, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. At sunset, we came in sight of the lodges, and the length of 2 crossbow shots before reaching them met 4 Indians waiting for us. They received us well. We told them in the language of the Mariames that we had come to see them. They appeared to be pleased with our company and took us to their homes. Spanish claims on what is now California began with Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who explored the coast around present-day San Diego in 1542. 60 years later, Sebastian Vizcaino sailed up the California coast, giving many places the Spanish names we still use today. Spain also continued to pursue its claims on what is now Florida. After several failed attempts at a settlement there, Pedro Menéndez de Aviles built in 1565 built a fort in an area on the east coast that he named St. Augustine. And let's take a look here at this map. So this is the routes of Spanish explorers from 1513 to 1603. So these are in yellow, lands claimed by Spain in 1513. Orange is lands claimed by Spain in 1536. And red is lands claimed by Spain in 1575. And then these are the different explorers. So you just match up the color, and that will give you the name of the explorer and the routes that they took. Field trip, St. Augustine, Florida. St. Augustine, Florida is the oldest permanent European settlement in the United States. After coming ashore on August of 1565, Spanish Admiral Pedro Menendez de Aviles turned the site into a fort and named it St. Augustine. It remained a Spanish city for more than 200 years. Today, you can see the Spanish influence in the city's historic district. Let's take a look at some of these pictures here. So this is Grace United Methodist Church. And this says, Castillo de San Marcos. This fort was built by the Spanish between 1672 and 1695 to protect the city from naval attacks by the British and the French. It was constructed from blocks of conquina, a combination of limestone and seashells. When you tour the two levels of the fort, you can see how carefully it was built. It was never captured by military force. That's interesting. And this says, Mission Nombre de Dios. This small chapel marks the spot where the first Spanish colonists came ashore in 1565. The current building is more recent and is surrounded by beautiful gardens filled with flowers and plants of Florida. And here is a map of old St. Augustine, Florida. So you can see here's the fort right here, the church, and then this would be the town and the cities there. And it says, what do you think? Do you think you would like to visit St. Augustine? Why or why not? I think I would. Looks like a pretty cool city to visit and see. All right, boys and girls, go back and rewatch this video for any sections that you missed or aren't sure about. And as always, we'll see you soon.